Hi everyone, welcome back. We're here in our 18-foot growing dome where we began our straw bale garden about 4 months ago. Today we're going to talk all about the progress that we've made, some of the things that we've learned along the way, and also what our next steps are going to be. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So as you can see, our beds have dropped pretty significantly. We knew this was going to happen, we just didn't know how much. So it wasn't too much of a surprise to us, but we found that our beds did sink 8 to 10 inches in some of the lowest spots. And we did go ahead and start filling those in with some soil and more compost as those really deep spots started to pop up. We've noticed that our levels are a little bit lower than we would like overall for the entire bed, so we are going to be refilling the beds with some Paonia Soil 50-50 blend today. We're using that blend because it has 50% sphagnum moss and 50% cocoa coir, which means that it will stay light and airy and help us avoid the compaction issues that we had, which is why we had to do this all in the first place. We found that our nightshades did the best with this first round of planting. As you can see, our tomatoes are doing great and starting to produce fruit. Our peppers also have fruit on them as well. Our eggplants are flowering. We found that cucurbits, our lemon cucumber and our pickling cucumber, didn't do so well with this first round, which was a bit of a surprise to us because cucumbers typically need a lot more nitrogen, which these beds have plenty of. They just didn't work for us this first time. We also planted beans, carrots, leafy greens, and flowers in here, which all did well. They didn't do any better or worse than we see in our other soil-filled garden beds. Luckily for us, nightshades don't mind being buried, so we're going to leave all of our tomatoes and our eggplants in place. We've removed the bottom branches so that when we do add our additional soil, we won't be burying those. But they may actually start making roots higher up on the stem. We've also potted up as many of our leafy greens, herbs, and other plants that we could. We did notice that almost everything that we pulled out of here had really deep roots, which is a great thing. It means the plants are nice and healthy. And that's likely due to the mycorrhizal fungus that we added in our initial fertilizer application, as well as all of the mushroom compost that we used in here. Before we get too far into today's video, we do need to discuss another issue. Why are you not subscribed? We put out new videos every week and it's always a great time, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future content. Now for the real issue we need to discuss, fungus gnats. Fungus gnats are a very small, delicate fly, similar to a fruit fly. And the adults are more annoying than harmful, but the larvae can actually wreak havoc on your plant's root systems. The adults will lay their larvae in the soil, and they feed off of decaying organic matter, fungi, and algae. In this dome, we have filled our garden beds with straw and compost, specifically mushroom compost. So we have a lot of decaying organic matter, and we have a lot of fungi available for them to feed on. Therefore, we've created a perfect environment for these little flies. We believe that the fungus gnats were introduced into this greenhouse inside of the compost that we used. We have utilized that compost in a different greenhouse where we've used a more traditional gardening method of straight soil in the raised garden beds, and we've noticed a small population in there. But again, because we have the decaying organic matter with the straw, I think we've just created a perfect place for them to thrive. They have a really short life cycle, which can allow them to blossom out of control very quickly. And we've utilized a few different methods to try to eradicate the adult population, as well as attack the source, which is the larva in the soil. We've utilized apple cider vinegar traps, we've utilized sticky traps, we've added ventilation into our greenhouse, and it just doesn't seem to be doing the trick. We also began watering these raised garden beds with BT, which is a bacteria that actually helps to kill off the larvae of mosquitoes, black flies, and fungus gnats. It seems to have worked marginally. The population has decreased, but we do still have a pretty thriving population in here. So we're calling in the recruits and we're bringing in the beneficial nematodes. Nematodes are microscopic parasitic roundworms that infiltrate the larvae of insects that lay their eggs in the soil. They are safe for mammals, fish, amphibians, reptiles, pretty much everything except for the insects that lay their eggs in the soil. They will infiltrate that larva, and once they kill it, once it's dead, they will move on to find another host. As long as there are enough hosts, the nematodes will continue to do their job. They will help to eradicate the new generations that are being laid, and therefore will help us to control this population in the long term. Once the hosts are no more, the nematodes will die off. BT and beneficial nematodes can be used at the same time, but we've opted to stop our BT treatment to see how well the nematodes work. We've applied our first application and will wait 7 to 10 days as recommended by the supplier to apply a second application because our infestation is so severe. You may start to notice a diminishing population in 48 to 72 hours, but maximum control is not expected for 2 to 4 weeks. We do recommend Arbico Organics for all of our beneficial insects, and if this treatment does not work, we will reevaluate applying another round of BT or another round of nematodes. I'm going to take some of the straw that hasn't decomposed as much around the edges, kind of break that up and put it in the middle, just so that we can get everything to be a little bit more even throughout the year. Now that we've got gnat out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get to the refilling process. So as I mentioned, some of our areas have sunk significantly more than others. So I am going to go around with this tamper just to kind of get everything to settle down. I'm not trying to compact the soil super hard, but we don't want to have to do this refilling process again, at least until next year. So we're going to go ahead and smush everything down as much as possible, fill it with that paeonia soil, and we also do have some worms in here already that will help to keep everything nice and aerated. We will be keeping the soil nice and moist to make sure that our nematodes stay alive, and that second application of nematodes will be on top of that new soil so that if any of these existing adults do lay more eggs, we can help eradicate them at the source. Ta-da! Everything is now full and planted. We did plant back the majority of plants that we had pulled out originally. There was a few of them that were just a little bit too wilted to make it back in here. And some of them are still looking a little bit droopy, but I'm confident that they will come back in a couple of days. We are going to go ahead and set some of our traps. We're going to do some at the soil level, and we'll also hang some up throughout the greenhouse at a higher level. We're also going to reset our apple cider vinegar traps, which again is 2 tablespoons apple cider vinegar, about a sprinkling of sugar, a little bit less than a teaspoon, and a couple drops of dish soap. Apple cider vinegar traps work to trap fruit flies and fungus gnats because the apple cider vinegar stimulates a fermenting fruit, which they really like decaying organic matter. And then we add the sugar to entice them a little bit more to come in. And then the soap in here actually changes the surface tension so that the gnats can't get back out. You do need to make sure that the mixture is mixed thoroughly, preferably until there's some bubbles on the surface. So we have noticed that most of our flies are congregating in the northwest side as well as the southeastern side of our dome. I believe that is due to where the vents and the fan is positioned in this greenhouse. So we have our fan pretty much due south. We have a couple of vents to the east and west. We also have our door on the east side. So they are congregating where there's not active airflow. So I've set the majority of our traps in these areas so that we can, again, try to eradicate that adult population so that we don't have to deal so much with the larvae in the long run. We already have seen a pretty significant decrease in the amount of adult fungus gnats. I think that is in part due to all of the soil work that we did in here. We might have scared some of them off, which is fine by me. And hopefully these traps will help to collect the rest of the adults that are still present. And then when we do that second nematode application, that should eradicate any of the larvae that is left. Overall, I would recommend straw bale gardening for beginners and experienced gardeners alike. It is an inexpensive way to get started. We did get almost a full growing season out of the straw bales and compost themselves. And even though we have had to do some pest mitigation and refill our garden beds with soil, we used about 3 yards less soil than we would have if we had done these beds with straight, high-quality topsoil. I do want to mention that we do know other gardeners who have used this gardening method who have had no issue with fungus gnats. And that is to say, don't be afraid to try it. We encourage you to try new things because if you never try, you'll never know. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.